Well, many people in the transgender community keep to themselves and silently go through life, but not our next guest. She is speaking out and encouraging other trans women to live their lives openly and happily.
Advocate and best-selling author of Redefining Realness, My Path to Womanhood, Identity, Love, and so much more. Janet Mock is here to chat with us about her life, her challenges, and her book. The first to really write a book like this. Why?
I think I wrote it just to kind of give girls that grew up like myself a mirror. I think we all kind of need reflections of ourselves in pop culture, in media, and of course in literature. I grew up in the library. I read a lot of books. And so for me, it was kind of a way for me to pay homage and kind of pay back, give back a bit, right, by being so honest about my own story and giving it to another young girl to also, you know, see herself.
Yeah, but you know what, in the very beginning, you talk about being an example, and you talk about how hard that is and how lonely it is for you. So was it difficult for you to make the choice to actually write? Because, I mean, there are some really powerful stories in here.
Yes, I think representation is always a hard thing, right? When you're so visible within media and people see you as kind of the one who made it out, you know, and I think a part of me, there is a struggle there to kind of be so vocal and open and also advocate for these issues that are dire and an emergency in our community.
But also be vulnerable enough to tell the ugly side and the hard parts that you had to go through in order to finally get to the place where you are now.
Yeah, but I think that honesty, that vulnerability, the public vulnerability is necessary to not only help us understand and educate one another, but also hopefully to come to some kind of transcendence in our culture, to understand trans people and the struggles that we go through.
When did you know?
I think I knew probably like that little picture there.
There you are.
At about 3 years old. I think my mom always loves to tell this story of me landing in the emergency room because I tried on one of her earrings and the earring backing went into my ear. And so me expressing femininity at such a young age and my parents not necessarily scolding me, actually encouraging me to just kind of play and explore and be who I was. And of course, I'm sure there were back room arguments between my mother and my father, but I think overall they were very affirming of my identity.
But there was also one story that I picked out here where you were at school and it was your teacher asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you raised your little hand and you said, I want to be a secretary. So, you know, you had a little note that you had to take home to Dad, and his reaction wasn't exactly what, you know, wasn't exactly supportive.
But that's very my father. My father was the one that kind of, I think, had the hardest time accepting my identity. He tried his best to kind of make me be like my younger brother Chad, to be more tough, to play football, to do all these things. And I was a tough and adamant child, but at the same time I was also feminine because I knew myself to be a girl, even though he knew me to be his firstborn son.
What do you want people to take away from the book?
I think I want them to take away the fact that we all have stories and that trans people for a long time not been able to tell their stories. And I hope that we are in a new era in which that trans people have the tools now through internet, through media, to be very vocal about the issues and their own stories. I think that once you know someone's story, it's harder for you to then dehumanize them and belittle them.
What has the reaction been from other people in the community?
I think it's just been overwhelmingly support and love because we rarely get to have these examples of people in media talking about our issues and also being celebrated. You know, this book debuted on the New York Times bestsellers list, and that's an amazing feat, and I think a lot of people don't get to have that. And so for me, I wanted to move to New York to be a writer and to be myself, and I get to do all of those things.
Check. Yeah, seriously.
Also, you want to take down that Piers Morgan. So what
happened?
What was going on there? Why did it get so heated?
I think his misunderstanding speaks to our culture's wider misunderstanding. I think this moment was a lot bigger than me and Piers. I think that we were unable.
Well, what happened? What was he? He just didn't want to leave something alone, right?
Well, he didn't want to leave alone the fact that I'd never identified as a boy, that I always identified as a girl, no matter what, maybe how I was born and all these kind of things. And so I think that we were having an issue speaking across difference. And I think trans people have spent a long time developing language to talk about ourselves. And I think that a lot of the wider community, the mainstream community, doesn't understand that we have language to define ourselves and that you should accept those definitions and not try to force us to
out of respect.
identify. Yeah, and we all have the room. All of us have the room to define.
Yeah, but in his defense, I think there is a great deal of ignorance about that.
Oh, definitely.
Jared Leto wins an Academy Award for playing a transgender patient. Great acting, but was the community a little dismayed about him playing that role as opposed to another transgender actor?
Well, for me, as someone who advocates for the trans community, we have a lot of joblessness and underemployment, so I would have loved for a trans actress to play that role. But I think that he did a great job, and I think there's a lot of mixed emotions within the community. I don't think it's only about Jared Leto being cast, but I think the way in which her character, Rayon, was a woman. She identified as a woman, and she was constantly misgendered, and she never corrected them. And I think that that's something that's hard for a lot of trans women to understand. Like, if someone was calling me he and him,
Right.
I would correct them kindly, and then after a while I would get upset.
But the good part is that the movie did open conversation.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's
So
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
has the book.
Yes, absolutely. Great book.
Janet Mock,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so much
much.
for joining us on the couch, and Redefining Realness is on sale right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.